Running starts his wide punt return.
I know the risk of playing football, and it's a risk I'm willing to take.
You're taking your eyes away from guys running full speed.
If I get 1 or 2 more in the next 4 years, I think I'll be fine in the long term.
Football has always been a dangerous game. Over 100 years ago, 45 football players died in the early 1900s from their injuries, leading to a wide-scale push to make the sport safer. With the recent focus on concussions and chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is a progressive degenerative disease of the brain found in athletes with a history of repetitive brain trauma, the game is again under scrutiny. A study conducted by the Institute of Medicine and funded by the NFL found that in most cases, most concussion symptoms disappear within 2 weeks. However, authors say in 10 to 20% of individuals, concussive symptoms persist for a number of weeks, months, or even years. Neurosurgeon Dr. Todd Ridenauer says concussions range in seriousness and intensity, which makes this type of injury all the more harder to identify and treat.
How long were you unconscious? 30 seconds, a minute, an hour, that type of thing. In reality, probably that's not as important as we used to think it is. What's more important has to do with some basic functioning afterwards, including your ability to retain memories, amount of retrograde or anterograde amnesia, as well as attention span issues and ability to concentrate.
However, over the years, there have been many different ways to gauge how serious the concussion is.
A sudden jolt or jarring of the brain that changes the way the brain metabolizes briefly. And this ranges all the way from someone having a minor blow to the head where they get their, quote, bell rung and don't quite feel right for a few minutes but never lose consciousness, all the way up this spectrum to very severe acceleration, deceleration injuries where you tear the brain substance, get hemorrhages within the brain, get horrible cerebral edema.
Senior Andrew Seymour had to quit the game he loved because of concussions in high school as well as college. His second concussion was more severe and determined his football career fate.
Everything just kind of goes quiet for a second, and then I think mine was in the third quarter of the game, but the rest of the game just flew by really quickly. And then your head, after a while, it kind of hits you that, holy smokes, got another concussion.
Lawsuits, increasing injuries, and a popular movie have added pressure to all football coaches from the lowest levels of football to the highest, with the coaches teaching tackling techniques correctly. Football coaches now have to enforce these techniques in games or practices to keep their players safe. However, that is not always easy.
Proper technique is being coached, it's being talked about. And I know when it comes to lawsuits and litigation, if they can go back and trace a football coach having said something about using your head in the wrong way, you're setting your high school up for a lawsuit.
One of the positives coming out of the awareness of concussions at this point is teaching the proper techniques of tackling, really keeping your head up, keeping your eyes up to, one of the coaching points is always to see what you tackle. When you can see what you tackle, it means you're tackling with your head up and not using the crown of your helmet or the top of your helmet in terms of tackling.
Many may feel that concussions in football are easy to hide from coaches, trainers, and teammates, but sometimes the after effects are very noticeable.
Actually, in high school, in a game, one of the opponents, one of our guys tackled him. He went to the ground pretty hard, hit his head against the turf, actually, and he got up and started walking towards our huddle instead of his. And then they had to grab him, bring him over to the sideline, and obviously he was done for the day.
Before participating in any sport at schools such as Pleasant Valley and Bettendorf and at St. Ambrose University, all athletes must take a baseline concussion test. This test enables healthcare professionals to see athletes' cognitive thoughts and processes. However, this is not true for all schools. It is encouraged by the state of Iowa, but it isn't mandatory. And high school athletes, parents have the right to refuse the test, just like a vaccination.
If they're ever involved in any type of a concussion type situation, then they go back to that baseline, and that baseline has a lot to do with when they can even be considered for a return to playing.
Besides the baseline test, most of the athletic training staff make sure the player is symptom-free before they're even allowed to compare the baseline test to themselves. Then the recovery period varies from player to player.
Practice with no pads. And a couple days later, put the pads on and those type of things. So kind of progress them back in. So oftentimes that process can take, a couple, 3 weeks.
Despite knowing the long-term effect of concussions, some players in the NFL continue to disregard technique and hit helmet to helmet, setting a poor example for high school and college players.
So they try to enforce it, but it's never going to happen. They're too fast, too strong just to not go at each other head to head.
I think it's fascinating that anyone who lives in this country could have ever thought, in their wildest imagination, that football was a safe sport.
The big debate regarding concussions in the sport: will football be forced to change?
It's a violent sport. It's popular because it's violent. You will not get 85,000 people paying $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 in revenue to sit in a stadium and watch people play flag football.
Even with all the knowledge and technique of tackling in games and practices, truly preventing every concussion is just too hard. However, doing a little extra may put a player in a more safer position.
Strength, conditioning, be it weightlifting, isometrics, all the different types of training that are done, those are the things that will be very beneficial.
Playing football has its benefits, like building relationships, confidence, and character. It also poses serious risks, but Ridenauer says so does driving a car, walking across the street, and cheerleading.
Sports are a recreational thing, and can you get hurt doing it? Sure, of course you can. But I gotta tell you, the benefits far outweigh the downside.
The one certainty, however, is that all it takes is one hit to thrust the debate back into the limelight. It takes only one hit to change a player's life forever.